Amen. I'm definitely going to step on that one. Do you know what the number one wedding gift is? I was wondering about that, so I Googled it, and it's really hard to find out. There's no, universal survey that says the number one wedding gift is this. There's lots of different ideas around it, but generally, what I did find was the general consensus is that in 2021, the most popular wedding gift was an Instant Pot. You know, one of those fancy things, that you cook in. That was the number one wedding gift. In fact, the top 10 wedding gifts were all food-related items. Appliances of some kind, or I think number 8 or 9 was to give them a cooking class for couples. But they were all food-related. They were all household-related. All very practical. I don't know about I guess the cooking for couples thing is still practical, but they were all very practical. If you're a little bit more traditional, though, there's also, by the way, there's a list of traditional gifts to give, and the number one list on the traditional gift is a pair of glasses. Sorry, not glasses, but like wine glasses or champagne glasses, I guess. That's the number one gift. So for those of you who have weddings coming up this summer, good to know, right? Good to know. I'm mentioning that because I don't want anything I say after this point to be interpreted as, if you're going to a wedding, you don't need to take a gift. Just so we're clear about that, please remember, it's always nice to take a gift. It's a sign of, of thoughtfulness and kindness to the people whose wedding you're attending. I will say, by the way, though, that I do think that it's important that you make sure that the gift that you give is something that is meaningful to the people it's being given to. And which is probably why the top 10 things are all household items. I mean, everybody needs stuff for their kitchen, right? If you already have it, it's good to have a second one, so, when the first one wears out, you know what I mean. I wonder what Jesus took to the wedding. I know that was a leap, wasn't it, a bit? But I wonder what his gift was when he went to the wedding. I wonder what all the disciples brought. Do you suppose they got together and got one thing, or maybe they brought individual things? It says they were invited too. Or do you think maybe Mary was invited, so that meant Jesus was invited, and then he brought his friends? I mean, that happens sometimes, right? You think you're inviting one person, and their plus one turns out to be 12? Yeah. Anyway, I wonder when this wedding happened. It's in those days it was a community thing. Everybody in the community came and participated, and it was a big deal, right? There was a wedding ceremony itself, and then there's a big party. And so here's a wedding in a community. Everybody's there. They're having a good time. You hope. I mean, it doesn't say that they are. We don't know. But weddings are a celebration. And they ran out of wine. And some things happen that result in there being more wine. Good wine, too. I got to say, for a while, early on, the first few times I actually heard this story, way back when, my initial thought was, Jesus needed his mummy to tell him how to behave properly? And he wasn't really nice about it, it sounds like, in the story. His mom comes to him and says they're out of wine, and Jesus is like, yeah, so? What am I going to do about that? I imagine the conversation then went kind of something along the lines of, go and get them some more wine. But it doesn't make Jesus sound like it certainly doesn't make it sound like his public persona and his social persona are the same, does it, very much? But hang on a second. What if, just go with me for a minute here, what if the water to wine thing, it's a miracle? It's a miracle story. It's the first of the signs whether it's just a sign, miracle, whatever language you want to use to describe that, something amazing happens. But what if the water to wine part of that miracle is a metaphor? I know it sounds like I'm going to explain away the miracle. I'm not explaining away the miracle. I'm going to ask you to consider what a miracle is, but just go with me here for a minute. You know, because we've all been there, you've been to one of those parties where it starts fine, but stuff happens, right? Somebody says something they shouldn't, or the people who've been invited to the party aren't really all that community-minded. They don't really all know each other, and so you end up with a little group over here, a little bit group over there, a little group over there. The music starts, everyone's supposed to dance, right? There's the first dance, and then the DJ invites everybody out onto the dance floor, and nobody moves. Could be that the DJ, by the way, is not very good, but it could also be that people just don't want to dance. They're not feeling it. And the thing is, when they're not feeling it, it's probably because other stuff's going on. And that could be they're having nice conversations, could be, sure. But it could also be that they're just not having a good time. There's not the spirit for it. Maybe the Romans were just through town last week, and people aren't really in the mood for it, for a big celebration. There could be any number of things. There could be, I don't know, there could be a pandemic going on. Who knows what's going on in the situation there? But something's happening. And it's just not the celebration it ought to have been. And then something happens. A person gets out on the dance floor. A person with a little kid gets out on the dance floor. It looks like they're having fun. People start to join them, and before you know it, the whole thing's been turned around. Somebody makes a speech, right? You get one of those wedding speeches that's, either entirely inappropriate or it's kind of dry, and everyone's like turned off now for the rest of the evening. But then somebody else gets up, and they're positive, they're upbeat, they're entertaining, they're exciting, and suddenly everyone's laughing, they're having a good time again. Maybe the main course wasn't great, but the dessert was fantastic. Who knows? Something happens that turns things around. Somebody does something that turns things around. Oh, look, more wine. Hey, yay. Does it really matter what it was? Because the real gift in this situation, the real miracle in this situation, isn't the thing itself. It's what it did. Think of all those times. Remember there's a story about how Jesus had been doing all these things, all these miracles and stuff. And basically, people would just follow him around, come up to him and go, hey, do another one. Do us another one of those miracles. Come on, show us who you are. Do a miracle. And Jesus would say, I don't think you're getting the point of the miracle. Because the point isn't the magic. The point is what it's showing you. What's the result of this? That's the real miracle. The real miracle isn't that there was these many loaves and these many fishes and suddenly everyone was fed. It wasn't this part. It was that everyone was fed. It was that part. In fact, so many people were fed that people went away with extras, leftovers. The real miracle was everybody. Not just that one magic act. If you're really keen, by the way, on the thinking around that, Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson does a really entertaining, funny, amazing, and slightly inappropriate and perhaps slightly offensive at the end sketch where he's a priest, a Church of England priest, who's reading scripture. And he starts out with this: there was a wedding in Cana in Galilee. And it gets to the point where Jesus turns the water into wine, and they knew not whence it had come, but the servants knew, and they applauded loudly in the kitchen. And then it turns into this, go on, Jesus, do us another one. Routine, where they get Jesus to do these magic tricks. Already, it probably sounds, you're probably offended already, because I just said miracles are magic tricks. Jesus said that. He tried to tell people it's not about the trick. It's about what it shows you. And what's the result of this? And what it shows you is that if you think a miracle is something that you can't do, that's not what a miracle is. Because I think that's the other piece here, is that I think Jesus is about showing us the presence of the divine and the human in all of us. The presence of the divine in all creation. And when you recognize the presence of the divine in all creation, miracles are possible. Miracles happen. Because suddenly, you don't see a miracle as a magic trick that only certain people can do. You know what it is and how it happens. And you can do it too. What if the miracle in the wedding story isn't water into wine? What if the miracle is Jesus' presence there helped bring people together, helped create community, helped bring people to celebration in a moment when it seemed like that wasn't going to happen? When it seemed like things were over, suddenly they were not. Because you can do that too. You can do that by sharing your gifts with others, by recognizing the gifts that are in other people, the very things that create a sense of belonging and a sense of community, by recognizing that the gift that Jesus brought to the wedding might not have been an Instant Pot, but it also wasn't new wine. It was Jesus. The gift Jesus brought to the wedding was himself. The gift that you bring is you. Your presence. And I am going to for sure tell you that when you go to a wedding, the truest gift that you bring is your presence. It truly is. Because a wedding, and honestly, you have to go to the ceremony. Don't just go to the party. You have to go to the ceremony. Because the point of it being a communal thing is that it's not just about two people. It's about the community showing their support for these two people. It's about the community expressing their love for these two people and for this very act of coming together, this very act of commitment. You're not just witnesses in the legal sense. You're active participants. The same is true of baptism. We talked about baptism last week, and particularly within I hope this is true of all churches, but particularly within our church, it is considered a community act. It's a sacrament of the community. That's why we don't do private baptism unless it's an emergency, but we do it as a community because we recognize that it's not just a question of the one, it's a question of the one and the all. That we all are part of that we are all offering our support and our love and our care. We're all a part of that. It's a community act. When we gather for communion, it's a community act. The word community is actually in there, isn't it? Communion. That's also why the table of Jesus, by the way, is open to all. Is because we all bring our gifts to the table, the gift of us. You are a gift. You are a gift because you are, and you have gifts to offer, which are you. And they're all different. We're all different. That's why diversity is such a wonderful thing, and why it's so important to community. Imagine how boring and dull and bland a community would be if we were all the same. The richness of the community comes from the fact that we're all uniquely different. And that we are not only able to share how we're uniquely different, but that how we're uniquely different is accepted and welcomed by the community. That's what creates that wonderful community. So, I think that's how these stories go together. I think this first sign, like all of the signs that Jesus does, all of the miracles that Jesus does, the true miracle isn't the action itself, it's what it shows us, which is the power of God, the power of love, that energy, that spirit that is not only in Jesus, but is in you and I, and you and I. That's appalling grammar. Apparently my gift is not grammar, you and me. But I have other gifts. I do. So do you. So do you. So do you. We all share in creating a community that is full of the gifts of the individuals that help create that gift of community. You are a gift. We are all a gift to ourselves, to each other, to all that is. Thanks be to God.